All right, thank you for staying with us. The tragic death of 30-year-old Cynthia Oguzie, who was reportedly killed when an overhead water tank collapsed onto her apartment in the Lekki area of Lagos State, has opened up conversations about safety, accountability, and regulation in Nigeria's housing sector. Although the Lagos State government has announced plans to launch an investigation, many have attributed the cause to negligence in the construction sector or use of unlicensed welders, particularly in upscale areas like Lekki. Others shared concerns about landlords and developers cutting corners for profit. As investigations unfold, Nigerians are urging authorities to act swiftly to prevent another life from being lost. Though for the affected Cynthia, it is already too late. Well, joining us in the studio for this conversation is an estate surveyor and property developer, Ewenla Mustapha. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
It's good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. A really sad story there with Cynthia's death. May her soul rest in peace, by the way. And that has caused or generated a lot of concern, like we mentioned, with regards to regulations and also accountability. But then the question of how did this even happen, or how could it have happened, also comes to the fore, because we hear that the owner of the property is not in Nigeria, there were calls made and all of it. But from your perspective as an estate surveyor and a developer, what do you think could have happened?
Well, very sadly, we all woke up to that news a week ago. And what came to my mind first was, this could have been me. Could have been anybody, because when you go house hunting, the last thing you want to check is to go and start checking for the integrity of a water overhead tank.
Absolutely.
That's the last thing that would be in anybody's mind. So very sadly, it took the life of Cynthia. Our heart goes out to the family, and I think that this brings us to how we got here as a nation. There's a lot of impunity in the real estate industry. There's a lot of shenanigans going on in that industry. And we as professionals in the past few months or few years, we have always, advocated that the government has to sanitize this industry, particularly this Lekki axis. A few months ago, around a certain building collapsed. On the news, we heard one person died, 2 persons died. I took my time to drive to that scene, and I confirmed from neighborhood, the guys in the neighborhood, they said about 6 people died. So it just takes us to the quality and the kind of services artisans are giving to property developers. And that takes us to when people build houses, who are the artisans you use for your construction? A lot of people, when they want to do these overhead tanks, they just go down the road and pick one welder and just tell them, please do this. And that welder, because nobody is supervising him, he feels he's not accountable to anybody. Because most of these things boils down to lack of supervision. Yeah. Lack of supervision, lack of substandard materials used for construction. So when this welder finishes the job, nobody goes back to conduct an integrity test on that job that he has done. And when this havoc happens, when this tragedy happens, innocent, like I said, the last thing, in Abuja in November 2024, a similar scenario happened somewhere around Abaji. A family of 5 narrowly escaped that day, this same overhead tank. So the impunity in the real estate industry needs to be checked. Our regulatory authorities, the RED and the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria, what are they doing about these things? And particularly, everything still rises and falls on the government. The government needs to clamp down on quackery. Quackery, is spreading like wildfire. So last year, we had 2 cases of building collapse. Now we're talking about 2 cases of overhead tank in the space of 6 months. So I just think that the entire value chain involved in the process of building construction, there needs to be proper check. We have, normally when you start building houses, we have LABSCA. LABSCA will come and tell you, let's see all your papers, you have to conform with certain documentations. Exactly. But those happen during construction. I think that we are getting to a point where LABSCA or a certain government agency needs to come back to conduct a post-construction inspection before agents or landlords start giving out their houses. Then if that is done, I think that would drastically reduce this menace. Because if you know that it's not just enough to sit in your office and approve a certain building for construction, after construction is finished, you have to go back to be sure that all the things that you highlighted are properly, what's it called, conformed with. Yeah. That's how you can be sure that this developer or the landlord or whoever built that house did justice to what was approved. But in a case where nobody goes back to conduct a post-construction inspection, this is why these things are happening. Well, and sadly, just 1 minute, sadly, again, the fact that, when these things happen, people don't take responsibility for these things. Yeah. This girl has died. I haven't heard any news about anybody being arrested since last week. Yeah. I haven't heard the news about anybody who was called for questioning. Right now, somebody should be in jail. The welder, the developer, or the landlord should be right now in the police custody, answering questions. But nothing is happening. That's why we'll continue to see this is happening if nothing drastic is done.
Well, I've heard government officials say that the logistics involved in all those checks is what has reduced the way these people, and I was telling them earlier on that when I was building, intermittently we had government officials coming to check the integrity and all that, and so on. But I don't think that is the case right now, because it's as if building is an all-comers affair. Everybody is in there. So real estate surveyors and all that, you guys have associations.
Yes, we do.
Don't you have an inspection arm in that association that could fill up where government is not doing what they're supposed to do?
Okay, so I belong to the Nigerian Association of Estate Surveyors and Valuers. And, there are certain rules and regulations guiding us. But we as a profession or as an institution cannot do the work of the government. We cannot do the work of the government. But what we can only advocate for is to advocate for people to make sure that they use qualified professionals for construction job. In this country, we have people who build houses. This same developer is going to be the one that will be supervising the welder. Is going to be the one that's going to be the architect, because he does not want to pay professionals. So nobody's actually supervising this job, because what the man is doing is direct labor. The same developer or the landlord is the welder, is the aluminum fabricator, is the one that is going to buy materials himself, and he does not have the requisite, skill set to know the quality of these things. That scaffold that fell down, when you build a scaffold, there is a certain level of thickness of steel sanctions or galvanized pipe that you can use. Don't forget that when these things are being installed, after you install all the tanks and you pump water into those tanks, it becomes heavier. Then over time, it will start, collapsing. And another very serious issue is people live in properties where there are no property managers managing them. Where you have property managers, the property manager's job is to go there every other 4 months to conduct that everything in that property is still in good shape. But people don't pay attention to our maintenance culture in this country is zero. People just collect rent, people just pay rent, nobody goes to check the quality of the house, if the house is still standing well or not. All the landlords are after is just to collect rent and increase rent. And that impunity and that level of craziness happens in areas where we have high demand for housing. In Nigeria, we have established that we have an housing deficit of over 17 million, some have said 18 million. Whether the figure is correct or not, there is a fact that we have an housing deficit, and that's because of a growing population. So in an area where we have an housing deficit, there will naturally be issues like this. So let me tell you, in Lekki, whether you like it or not, that house that this incident happened and took Cynthia's life, if you go there now, it's possible that they've re-erected that tank. Somebody has paid for Cynthia's room. Because there's a deficit, people are homeless. So what deficit means is that people are homeless, people, whatever it is, people just want to lay their heads under one roof, whether it is good or not. So nobody's really after the quality of the house. We saw the picture of what happened during the heavy rainfall 2 weeks ago. There was a certain house that I saw in Lekki, water was dripping out from all the POP lights. From all the POP lights, water was dripping out. So it tells us that the quality of job being done is just very shoddy, and it's because there is no supervision, and also because there is a housing deficit. So people don't really care if the quality of the house is good. They just want to sleep somewhere.
Well, let me take you back a little bit. So in 2023, we know that Jamal passed away in Ikotu-Egbe. He passed away, a tanker fell on him. Also in 2019, a Ghanaian, worker that works in Nigeria also passed away because of tanker. Now, my question is, most of the times we say government, but we've heard so many things that developers themselves, and not to say to you, they've become very selfish. It's all about their interest, it's all about money. for me, I say, before we even start talking about, okay, government needs to put things in place, when we talk about developers, what are you doing to make sure that the right properties are used before we even bring government into it? Because these are one too many stories. Yeah,
so that brings us to where I spoke about earlier. There's no how we can talk about conversations like this and not blame it on the government. You know why? In the UK, the government is practically responsible for building at least 70–80% of all the houses in the UK, because they understand that if they leave these things to developers, they may not do what they want. But in countries where our housing deficit is really high, the numbers are high, and the government is not doing enough to solve that housing deficit. So developers in their own power are coming up to say, let's help the government to reduce this deficit. And you know, so it's difficult to control. It's difficult to the detriment of people. Yeah, so now let me tell you, it's difficult to control what does not belong to you. Another trending issue that also, you know, that this conversation has, you know, triggered is people are talking about, oh, let's see how we can regulate the real estate industry. Let's stop people from collecting 2 years rent, 1 year rent. Mm-hmm. But how can you tell a landlord who has gone to the bank to collect loan and he has a certain duration to pay loan, not to demand for 1 year, 2 years rent? It's difficult. That's why these things these laws are there. Our Lagos tenancy laws are very clear, but it's difficult to implement it because a landlord will build his own house, do his own road, do his own water, generate his own power, and so it's difficult for the government to have full control of such landlord. He will put houses at different rates of his choice, and a developer will sell out, and a developer wants to build a house for 40 million and sell for 100 million. Nobody can tell him not to. If you don't buy it, somebody else is already there paying. So where is our humanity in this? Where is humanity here? So the honest truth, yes, we can say we want to put human face to this thing, but again, we have gotten to a point where a lot of the craziness happening in the real estate industry needs to be checked, and the government needs to intervene. And that's where my question comes in. We're talking about checks. We're talking about where government has failed, but here we are, we need to check. Yes. We are at a crossroad because the human lives are involved. We need to ensure standards are maintained. We need to ensure regulations are kept. We also need to ensure accountability, transparency, and monitoring. Everything has to be there for this whole industry to move. If we are to strike a balance, low-hanging fruits, where do we begin to addressing this matter? Okay, so I think the point of call, first of all, is to increase more on the advocacy to Nigerians. One, if you want to go into real estate development, you have to understand that human lives are involved. People are going to be staying in their houses, so you must deliver quality over quantity. A lot of developers want to make volumes in terms of money. They don't care about quality. And look at the certain issue that happened in Ikoyi one time, that even terminated the life of the developer. The entire building came down while the developer was in the structure. So, while under construction, the one that happened in Oriwo also happened under construction. So imagine when people have started living in that house, that means a lot of lives will go. The one that happened in Abuja last year too, the building was designed for an hotel. But somewhere along the line, the owner felt that maybe he was not making profit and converted the house to blocks of numbers of self-contained. The house collapsed early in the morning when people were still sleeping. So all these are issues. So again, the professionals, all the parties involved in the real estate industry needs to understand that the advocacy about quackery needs to increase. There are lots of real estate has become an all-comers affair. When you go down the road, you see a barber, he will tell you that he's also a developer. You see a welder, he will tell you, I build houses too. Nobody is, where is your license? How do you say you build houses when you don't have the requisite skill sets? So it has become everybody in Lekki now is a realtor. I'm a realtor, I'm a developer. So did you go to school to learn this? So how does government address that matter? So the government needs to arrest those that are not professionals that are into real estate, development. And that's how, because whether you like it or not, when those people, people just feel that, oh, I have money, I want to go, what can I really go into? Let me start to do development. Nobody is able to stop you from going into development because you have the resources. But employ the service of professionals that will help you, deliver those quality that you want. How affordable are the services of professionals? The honest truth is, the services are always very negotiable. If you want to rent, for somebody now, you want to build a block of 4 flats, a professional that's going to help you supervise that project to ensure that quality is delivered, because these artisans don't care.
Yeah.
What they want to do is collect your money, do rubbish, and just go. Whether you deliver quality or not, you are not there. So a professional who is going to help you monitor that project from the inception stage to the end. I mean, it depends on the volume of the project. So these things are negotiable. So there's no fixed amount.
Okay, but quickly, I want to. Okay, give us an amount first. We want to hear an amount.
You want to hear it in naira.
So if you want to construct a project that, let's say, a project of 50 million naira. So some professionals charge 10% of that contract sum as a professional fee. That's just 5 million naira to help you monitor the life cycle of that project to ensure that quality is delivered. I don't think 5 million naira. If you have 50 million naira to
the way he said it's just 5 million naira.
I don't think 5 million naira should be a problem.
But I want to talk about Redan. Do you think Redan is doing enough?
So I think Redan is overwhelmed. That's the honest truth.
Okay.
Because there's a lot going on in the real estate industry, particularly in Lagos. And the reason for that is not far-fetched. Lagos is the most populated state in Nigeria. Everybody wants to come to Lagos. The amount of people that migrate to Lagos every 1 hour, I heard a certain governor saying that every 1 hour, almost 50 people or thereabout migrates to Lagos in search of greener pasture. So that's why the reasons for accommodations, the search for accommodation will always increase. And a lot of times, the reason why most people is moving to the island is because it's an eyebrow area.
Proximity
I want to
as
stay.
well.
I want to be next door neighbor to the MD of banks. I want to be next door neighbor to the oil and gas top shot. That's why, and there's a lot of development going on the island. So there's this lot of housing shortage. If you go over Lekki now, a lot of people have converted their houses to different numbers of units of self-contained rooms. All the duplexes have been converted to make maximum profit, and I cannot blame them. But we just have to ensure that quality is delivered when doing all this.
Regulation obviously is a major problem.
It is.
In the housing sector.
I agree.
Another thing that is a very big problem is the price of building materials.
Yes.
My director here was just cracking me up when you said, look, I have 10 million. Can I build a house? With 10 million, you definitely can build a house with 10 million. How do we shore up regulation?
Yes.
We know it's a problem.
Yes.
And those of you that are in that sector,
yes,
know what should be done.
Yes.
So let's hear from you. How do we get government to do the regulation that it needs? How does Redan help?
So regulation is a very tough. It's supposed to be an easy job, to be the honest truth. But in this part of the country, regulation is tough to actually abide with, because in a country where people don't really like to follow due process. Even if you tell these developers that for you to build this house, you need to have this, you need to have your building approval, you need to have this, you want to see all your drawings, structural drawing, electrical drawing, submit it to, example, Lagos State LAPSCA. They will analyze it because they have a team of professionals in there. They'll analyze it and tell you, this is not right, you have to use this level of thickness, you have to. So, but again, in a country where people don't like to follow due process, it's difficult to implement, to enforce regulation. I tell you, Nigeria is one of the countries that has all the laws in this that you can ever think of, but implementation is the problem. Until our government finds it as a matter of importance to make sure that they follow through with these regulations and they prosecute anybody that is found wanting, then that's when we'll begin to have sanity in this industry.
Are you also saying that because you've been calling on government,
yes,
and because at some point you mentioned that the landlord will say, we'll go and borrow money from the banks,
yes,
have a timeline,
yes, yes,
and all of that, yet so he cannot be told how much he should collect,
yes, yes,
and then for what period he should collect, yes, the sums.
Yes.
So are you saying that government should also look at the matter of building? We know those times they used to have low-cost housing estates and all of those, but we're not seeing that anymore. Because even the Lagos State Assembly was talking about this some days ago, saying tenants or landlords need to ensure that they are not collecting 2 years' rent as such. They need to impose the, yes, tenancy law again. But you have mentioned something concerning. There is a huge deficit.
There is.
The landlords are getting their monies. We cannot, yes, tell them how to, run their business.
It's what they want here.
Can government really step into these matters? Because government will tell you, we have so many projects and we do not have that money.
So again, a lot of our conversations rises and falls on the effort of the government, and that's the honest truth. So let me tell you, the issue of how many years some land. So now let me tell you, I was on a radio show a few days ago, and I said that our Lagos State tenancy law, I personally have some reservations with that tenancy law. A tenancy law that tells you that some certain areas of the state are allowed to take 2 years rent, and some areas are not allowed to take 2 years rent. For me, that's a total mockery of that law. Now, the government is saying that some areas like Apapa GRA, Ikeja GRA, the landlords there can take 2 years rent, and some other areas cannot take 2 years rent. That's a total mockery. A law should cut across everybody, whether it's the area for the rich or the area for the low income or middle income earners. I mean, in the UK, whether you stay in Croydon, you stay in central London, rent is paid monthly, the whole of the UK. The same thing in America, the same thing in, I was in Kenya a few months ago, the same thing, the rent is paid monthly. Well, it doesn't matter whether you're living in Nairobi or living in Kelalesha, it's the same. So that law, our law needs to be rejigged. That law needs to be reviewed. It has to cut across everybody, whether you're, so, and also the issue of
government stepping in.
Stepping into the amount. I mean, let me now tell you, do you want to know the current CBN rate now when you want to borrow money bank for construction or for wherever? So it's very, the only solution way, I know that Lagos State Governor, this current governor, Mustapha, I know that since he assumed office, he has delivered well over 5,000 housing units. And that's the honest truth, the facts are there. But the thing is that a lot of time, the only thing I see that is faulty with those arrangements is that a lot of times those that are directly benefiting from those houses that government is building now, most of them are civil servants, and it becomes an issue. Right. It becomes an issue. Make it accessible to everybody, whether you're into the civil service or not. So that's how, because those low-cost housing in the right sense are for low-income earners who are not able to afford the high.
That's how some people even have their houses.
Yeah, yes. There's been a debate on social media, I don't know if you've seen it, where people are talking about the amount of prices that these landlords are putting on their houses. I'm sure you must have seen it on social media. Yes, we understand that, the prices for, construction is high. But there's a difference between sometimes, I don't know if you agree with me, but we know that some landlords can be criminals when it comes to the way they hype the money. We agree, the materials are really high, but still some prices. And I'm telling you, not a lot of people can rent houses in Lekki. Let's be honest, because you go to a 2-bedroom, you're here, they're calling 15 million. Like, it's outrageous.
A 2-bedroom flat in Lekki now is close to 15 million.
What? Just a 2-bedroom flat. So don't you think that these people are, it's criminal offense? Like, but let me tell you something, even some of the houses are not even up to standard.
I agree. And the reason why they're not up to standard is because there's a deficit, so people are just going with what they see. What is available becomes desirable when there's shortage.
But the
honest truth is, I agree with you that landlords are becoming very greedy these days. The amount
criminal.
the amount attached to rental values these days, you wonder, where do you want somebody who earns something very little monthly to be able to afford this? But the honest truth is, like I said, because there's a deficit and there's a huge market on the island or wherever in Lagos, as you are still there negotiating, like, can you give me a reduced amount? Somebody is walking in to pay. Because there's a deficit, so there's a shortage. But the truth is, yes, building material, right now, I give somebody a quote for a certain job in January this year. Just the person disbursed in the same January, I got to the market to start to buy building materials myself, and the price has almost tripled, not even double. I don't know what's going on. Inflation rate is high. So it's difficult to actually say. So when somebody has budgeted 100 million for a certain project and he ends up spending 200 million, of course, when it's done, he wants to make
Let me just ask you this quickly. If I want, as a developer, if I want to build a 2-bedroom in Lekki right now, how much will I be budgeting?
Well, it depends. So it depends on
a good 2-bedroom in Lekki. Yeah.
Well, so if you want to do a 2-bedroom standalone, just like a bungalow or something, just a 2-bedroom for free, I mean, I know that you spend close to over 100 million.
Wow. Standard 2-bedroom.
Standard 2-bedroom. Yes, on a plot of land.
But let's also look at, sorry about that, let's also look at the matter of the weather around that area, salt water and all of it.
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah. Yes. How that also comes to play when we see things like this happen. So
whether we like it or not, all of us know that island is a riverine area. We're surrounded by water. Yeah. And the water table and the iron in the water is actually very strong. So it's actually very difficult to if you want to have a clean water on the island, you have to put in place your reverse osmosis machine, you have to use your chemicals and all that. But then, even when you put in all that, you still cannot drink that water. It's just good for domestic use, washing your dishes, washing your clothes. But again, that does not determine the value of properties. I mean, you know what I mean? Yes, because I mean, what actually determines value of properties anywhere in the world, whether Lekki or London or UK, is location. So
well, why I asked that was, could that also have affected where the tank was fixed, so that the rust, you could make the pipe rust?
So before now, we used to have people build houses and they put overhead tanks on the building directly.
Yes.
But that also has its own side effects, because we've seen that over time, when there's a spillage on that same tank, the water now goes around all the entire roof and start to mess up the POP and everything. So that's why people have now said, you know what, let's stop putting overhead tanks directly on the building. Let's do a scaffold, an extension just by the side of the house. But the point is, it has to be strong. There are still sanctions everywhere in Lagos that they've been built for more than 10, 20 years. And they're standing, but the quality is just the problem.
Let me just say this. Water tankers, must they always be up?
Yes,
because of gravity.
For supply,
Ewenla Mustapha, estate surveyor, property developer, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
All right. Still ahead on TVC Breakfast, Nigerian.